Hey, and welcome to episode 12 of the Brewed for Life podcast. As promised, today I have one of my good friends, Joe, and we're going to get into some of the aspects of his life and how substances have impacted his life. And as you know, substances have impacted my life when I was younger with, some of the trouble that it caused me. And I felt like it was a good segue to have Joe be on this one because he's also been through his own stuff. We're going to get into a little bit about, what he went through and some of the things that I think are important, which is the process of recovery and the things that you have to deal with when you go through recovery. So I'd like to introduce Joe.
Dan, thanks for having me. I appreciate the warm introduction. This is an important topic, so I'm excited to get into it.
So as I had told you guys in the last episode, when I was younger, I did a lot of drinking, and the drinking kind of went from weekends to Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and sometimes some other days, and that was really just at night stuff. It wasn't like through the day and, to kind of keep your day rolling. But it did get me in trouble. I did get 2 DWIs and had to go through the whole process with the DMV and all of that kind of stuff, which we can get into a little bit on this since it's probably relevant now. So, Joe, why don't you just kind of give us a little bit of a start as to what led you into deciding that it was time to change a direction that, your life was going in?
Yeah, so I guess starting at the beginning, growing up, I was never a big drinker. It wasn't something that really appealed to me. I had goals in mind that were opposite of that, where drinking would just disallow me to succeed in those goals. But yeah, as you go through life, as everybody does, you start to have things that impact you. And based off of how I grew up, certain things that affected me when I was younger, I learned how to keep my mouth shut. And what I mean by that is I grew up in a household that was, people would identify it as broken, and I didn't growing up. My father was a drug addict at one point. My mother, as sweet as she is, she went along for the ride, and father was in and out of my life, which I didn't see as something that was impactful to me. But I grew up in solitude a lot. I grew up very quiet, very introverted. And so when things started to go downhill for me, as they do in life, I began to clam up even more. And so I needed an outlet. And that's when drinking was introduced more into my life. I was married for the majority of it, kept it a lot at bay. It wasn't really an issue until it became an issue. And so after I got divorced about 2 years ago now, actually 2 years ago tomorrow, it wasn't the divorce that kicked it into high gear. What it became was a lack of accountability and the realization that now that I'm alone, I have to address a lot of the issues that I've kept inside. And if I wasn't going to address them, I was going to quite literally drink myself to death. Because drinking served a couple of purposes for me. I was never bad when it came to social drinking. You mentioned the DWIs. I didn't have an issue when it came to going out. Not that I didn't ever, but I would say 95% of the time, I could go out and keep things at bay. It was my need to be in solitude, and drinking served the purpose of allowing me to bring my own walls down, because people have walls up with other people, just like I can and I do. But I also had walls up with myself. I wasn't tapping into any emotions that was going to be beneficial for me to get past some of these blockades that I had set up for myself. And drinking allowed me to feel emotions. And I wanted that. I craved that. The problem with that is when you are breaking down your own walls and you're feeling emotions, but you don't have a plan for how you're going to get out of or get over the hurdles, the blockades, then you're stuck not being unsure of when this is going to end. And in my head, it was not going to end. So I was going to keep drinking. I was going to keep drinking until I could find a solution.
Yeah, just keep the cycle, right?
Absolutely, and it was a cycle. And I wasn't going to be able to find a solution on my own. I'm my own biggest critic. I'm the hurdle I have to get over. And so I needed help to get through that.
So something interesting as you were saying that made me think about there was a period of time between when Ian's mom and I had split, and I met my now ex-wife, and in that time frame, as you know, I had mentioned before, like when Ian's mom and I had split, it was probably one of the easily the darkest moment ever in my life. Like times where I would just sit literally in a fetal position against a wall and not know what direction was up anymore. In that time frame, I didn't have Ian on the weekends. So for me to pick up a six-pack when I left work, I would literally drink 4 to 5 of those beers in a half-hour ride home from work to the house, where I would then just get changed and then go to the restaurant where Ian's stepdad now works, and I would sit at the end of the bar and eat dinner and drink beers until I felt like I was going to go home. And that's, like you said, that's how it started. And then it progressed where, like, I would just find myself just killing beers, like watching a Ranger game or whatever else. As we get into your story, like, my body didn't end up doing what yours did. And it didn't really start to impact me physically the way yours did. But I just got to a point where I was like, like you said, like you just have to make a decision. If I'm going to continue down this path, it's not going to lead to a good place. Or am I going to decide to branch off of this line and make some serious fucking changes as to how I'm going to be able to deal with things going forward?
Right.
So, with that said, as you were going through it and leading up to when you made the decision to seek some kind of guidance, help, which, like, you know, we talked about it, like, you're super proud that you had done that, because I play back different points of, you know, that time period, and two things really kind of stood out to me while you were going through this without realizing how bad it really was the first time you showed up, or one of the first times you showed up to see Cameron, and you showed up with a 16-ounce, like, Truly's or something, and I was like, I'm sitting there going, God, of all the years I've fucking known Joe, he drinks, like cognac or vodka. Like, what the hell is going on here?
You get less classy.
and then the next time I realized how bad it was when you reached out to me and LeVar, and you were like, I need you guys to come up here and talk to me. There's some stuff I need to talk about. And you didn't really, that night, you really didn't get into too much depth. I'm sure you thought you were getting into depth as to what the heck was going on. But I do remember leaving and saying to LeVar, like, how much did Joe fucking drink before we got here?
Yeah.
Because you were in pretty bad shape when we got there, and worse shape by the time we left. And that was when he and I were both like, what's going on with Joe? You know, like, also knowing some of the things that were surrounding you at that time, like, it didn't surprise me that, I don't know, you did what society would say a typical man does, like, just go have a fucking beer and deal with it, like, suck it up.
Right.
But there are some things that, like, you just can't sort through like that. So, like I said, if you could give just a little bit of a background of, without going crazy unless you want to, just like the steps that you were seeing leading up to when you decided that you were going to go and get some help?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of steps. There's a lot of progression. There's a lot of self-talk, positive and negative. You always think you can get through it. So you look at things that are going on, and for me, I come equipped with plenty of issues, plenty of, I have I'll call it a slight trauma history. Like there's things that have happened in my past that I don't harp on now, but they set the stage for who I would become in the future, aka how am I going to handle these problems.
They're like the top secret files that you store in the file cabinet but don't remember or even acknowledge that they're there, but you're right, they do. They find their way out and fold it on the desk in front of you, and you don't even realize that they're there or what it is, but it's the event that kind of, I don't want to say it triggers, but like it comes to the surface, you're not really sure that what it is, but it definitely puts you in a bad place.
Yeah, it absolutely does. I mean, there's things about people's personalities that are based around how they grew up, how they received information, how they interpreted the information, and what they decided to do with that. And everything becomes a habit. How you respond to things becomes a habit. And how I would respond to things were, you don't talk about it. You elevate above it by theoretically being stronger than. And one of the things that people would always mention about me was the consistency of the mood that I was in, and that was always a compliment. Being deployed, I was complimented on how I never seemed to waver, and that was sought after by people that were there because they wanted consistency from people. Mm-hmm. So a lot of things for me became reinforced, and so when it came to sort of addressing a lot of the issues, it wasn't which one. It was which one am I going to uncover, which is going to uncover a bunch of others beneath them that have branches and roots that run extremely deep.
Yep.
And me seeing it in total, I was like, I can't do this. I can't handle all of these issues. So the steps that sort of, and we can delve deeper into a lot of these as we go or in future podcasts, but the things that I saw for myself, which says, you are changing for the worse, I wasn't showing up to work, I wasn't taking care of myself, basic needs. I stopped doing the things that I was always passionate about. So basketball, gym, things that kept me healthy, things that kept me inspired, I stopped doing. And it's like when you see somebody who always has a new haircut or clean shoes, and all of a sudden they show up with their hair a mess or their shoes are dirty, you're like, uh-oh. Somebody
had a rough day.
Something's wrong. So when I stopped doing those things and I show up looking a little bit different, it was always the things that enabled me to at least appear on the outside as if I've still got it going. I've still got it all.
Yeah, I'm still on the path.
Yeah,
I'm still good.
If nobody else knows, that means I still have more time to figure this out. So.
What's funny about that is that, like, when I was younger and I'd be out drinking on the weekends and I would go into work on, like, Saturdays and Sundays, and I'd wake up and I'd be like, oh, man, I really don't feel that bad. A cup of coffee, like a bacon, egg, and cheese, and I'm fucking good. And then people would come in and be like, did you go out last night? Like,
right.
Here are the bags under your eyes. And, like, I don't know. I looked at myself in the mirror and I thought I looked normal.
Yeah, no, you gave yourself...
you give yourself those weird little glasses where, like, the world is fine, it's not fucking fine.
No, little eye test, little smell test, you think you're good to go. Yeah, but it takes other people to see it. Because the things that I noticed were, I looked different. I wasn't eating anymore. I was eating, the last few months before I decided to put myself in rehab, I was eating one meal a day. At the end of every day, because I would never wake up hungry. I was getting 2 hours of sleep a night. And they weren't good 2 hours, right? I was hallucinating. And I couldn't tell you if the hallucinations were due to lack of sleep or just the alcohol in my system consistently 24 hours a day.
They say, and I never noticed it, but they say that alcohol actually deprives you of sleep. It doesn't allow you to sleep like you normally would, which is wild to me because you think about it, like you go out drinking and you get home and your head hits the pillow and you are knocked the fuck out.
Right.
But if you go by what people are saying on the science side of it, like, you're not really sleeping, so what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, you are sleeping, but, like, you do, in essence, I guess so, right? Like, you wake up and you're still tired, you feel like shit, like, you're just not, I don't want to say whole, but you're not 100%. You're more like, I don't know, fucking 35%.
Yeah, it's a matter of, the quality of the sleep. The quality of the sleep. So, no, I wasn't getting enough sleep, and I wasn't getting quality. Not that you can have the best 2 hours of sleep of your life, and it's not going to. You might be able to survive like that for a day, maybe a couple days, but for months on end, no, I was hallucinating every single night, and I didn't know, especially when I would leave work on a Friday, have my 3 days off with the 5 and 3 schedule. I was consistently on the third day off attempting to detox myself before I went back to work. And I would sweat, and I would sleep, or I would attempt to sleep. I would shake, I would hallucinate, and I would be looking out of my bedroom into my dining room and see people, shapes, like silhouettes. My brain was not in a functional condition to have these elaborate hallucinations. I was seeing silhouettes. I was thinking there were things going on, and who knows? Maybe that was my dreaming. But yeah, it became a huge problem for me because I would wake up every morning dying of thirst because I'd been sweating all night, and I would try to drink water, and I would throw up water, and that triggered in my head, your body is rejecting the one thing that it needs. There's a problem here.
Yeah.
Not that I didn't know there was a problem, but yeah, all the signs were there that I needed help. And it was incumbent upon me to have the realization of, when are you going to do it? And it took too long, but it happened.
Yeah, you got there.
It happened, yeah.
You got there, and to be fair, like when you made the decision and you called and you were like, listen, I want you guys to come down and see me. I think it was the first weekend that you were there, and you were telling us about kind of being in like solitude and really starting to, I don't know, in your words you said like it was like detox, but like you had already started going through the process before you got there, so you were just ready after like a day or whatever to get out of what I think you said it was like a 3-day period or 5-day period or something where they put you in detox before they allow you to go up into what we'll call Gen Pop into where people were already into active recovery.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I was kind of taken back by the facility because I don't know, I think I got there and I expected it to be way more clinical. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't. It was more like and it might be a bad analogy, but it was more like a college dorm where there were like rooms in a common area and there were a couple little offices where therapists and stuff were and snacks and seltzers and waters and juice and whatever you wanted, and then also be able to have time and a space to be able to have like a separate time with your friends and family and whatever else. And I know there was a window, but the couple of times we were there, when you were there for that 30 days, like it didn't ever seem like they were like, okay, you guys got to kind of wrap it up. But I think that place really kind of embrace the fact that, like, yes, what they do there is good, and they know that it has to be very structured, but they didn't forget that the people that are going to help support you when you get out of there are also a key attribute as to whether or not an individual is successful. And I thought that was fantastic. And they all seemed very, very welcoming. You know, like, they were happy that friends and family cared enough about the person that was in there to come and spend as much time as they could to be able to be supportive of it. I was also taken back too, because you hear so many horror stories of people going into recovery and like they're forced into recovery and they're not there because they want to be there.
Yep.
I didn't get that vibe from anybody that we interacted with while we were there, or even noticed any of that kind of stuff while people just kind of arguing with family members or whatever. Like, I didn't notice any of that either.
Yeah, it's there. I mean, so to sort of address the beginning part of it, yeah, when you get into Gen Pop, it is more dormitory type setting. When you're going through the initial 1 week, and I believe I went through it in about 5 days of the detox part of it, it looks like a hospital floor. So you have hospital rooms set up with your nurse's station and all that, where your movement is limited. You're given medication, anti-seizure medication, whatever it takes to get you off of the whatever it is that you happen to be on. And everything is very regimented. You're not going through any programs that they have set up, because the whole goal there is we need you to get well before we put you through all the treatment plan that they have set up for us. So, yeah, you go into it, and I was ready only in the sense that I had made the decision. There are a lot of people that go through that are being mandated either by their job, the state, legally mandated, maybe their spouse is mandating them. Me, I happened to show up because I decided it was enough. And so it's a different mindset when someone forces you to go in and you're not ready. And there is a success rate statistically tied to that, but it doesn't equate to long-term success. So even though someone is being forced into it, maybe that's what is going to propel them forward. So for me, making that decision, and I give myself a little bit of credit. I made the decision on my second of my 3 days off, which means I had a day and a half.
I could keep it going.
Yeah, it was actually 9 a.m. on my second day off, and is when I showed up there. So I had a full 2 more days to just let loose. But I knew if I don't make this decision now, and I didn't tell anybody I was going to go. I mean, I kept it very, very minimal. Like, this is what I'm doing, and because I didn't want someone to. Not that they were going to talk me out of it, but they didn't.
I can guarantee you I wouldn't have talked you out of it. If you told me that you needed it and that's where you needed to go to kind of recenter yourself,
yep,
then I absolutely would have been like, then if you feel like this is what's going to help you get through all this, then you really need to go.
Yeah. I mean, it's a big thing because there's a lot of stigma attached to it. There's a lot of embarrassment attached to it. There's a lot of I'm the person that people have relied on for life advice, and I became a do as I say, not as I do. I can give you great life advice, and I would be relatively dead on when I give you some good instructions.
Yeah, some good guidance.
Good guidance, but. For me, I never wanted to be somebody, especially because I kept it all to myself. You noticed the problem, but you would have. You being around me, a lot of people didn't notice there was a problem, at least not to the same extent. So it was very embarrassing for me to have to make that decision, knowing what it would entail, knowing that my military career would probably now be in jeopardy, knowing that I may get a reputation at work. Knowing that people are now going to know if I decide to be open and honest about it, I couldn't see the light at the end of the tunnel. I couldn't see, hey, a year and a half later, you're going to be talking about it on a podcast.
Right.
There was none of that. There was, how can I erase this blemish from my life and come out as normal as possible? And it was the same thing when I first got there. How can I appear as normal as possible? Because I didn't want to be someone who went to rehab.
Yeah, but like with that said, like really, what is normal?
That's a good question.
There is no normal. You know, like so when I got my DUIs, like I was mandated to go to AA meetings.
Yeah.
And you know, when I was younger, after my first one, I was just an idiot, and didn't think I would ever get caught. But like I deserved to get caught that night. Like I specifically remember driving down the road from one fucking white line all the way across to the other white line, crossing the double yellow, like the whole 9 yards. Like I was driving going, oh shit, you're really fucked up.
Yeah, right.
I'm lucky that one didn't die, and two didn't hurt somebody else. And I ended up getting pulled over in a town that I knew a cop.
Mm-hmm.
And I got pulled over, and there must have been every fucking town cop in that town in the parking lot that I pulled my car over into. And I had a conversation with the officer that actually brought me in for booking. And I was like, I said, yeah, you know, I know this person. And he goes, well, why didn't you say that when we were back there at the scene?
Yeah.
We would have just gave you a ride home.
Yeah, right.
And my response to him was, why should somebody I know who worked really hard to get where they are now have me attached to them?
Yeah, yeah.
And I know because the person that I was talking about, I worked with at the store that I worked at, and this kid drove from a ton of different towns in the state, drove down to Baltimore, drove down to D.C. for several interviews, sometimes twice a week for interviews, just to get a job. And then he finally got one, and he had been a uniformed cop, I think, for maybe like a year, and now he wants me to be attached to that?
Yeah.
He didn't deserve that. So I intentionally didn't do that. But they granted me some leisures when I got back to the PD. Like, I didn't get put in a cell. Right. I got to hang out in like the booking room and uncuffed and whatever else, which, to be honest, like the sergeant that was in command was not happy. They told them to cuff me and put me in a cell, and my booking officer did, because now he can get in trouble. And the second time, I don't even think I had been drinking, but it was a normal weekend, and I was actually driving up to Litchfield to go see Ian's mom, and I was heading up 202 near New Preston, and the state cops used to sit in the town garage up there. And there's a passing line, and I think the speed limit there is 45, and I passed a car at 2 o'clock in the morning doing 50 miles an hour. And he pulled me over and lit me up. And I knew I was screwed. Mm-hmm. So I pulled off the road and parked into a parking spot in New Preston. And the cop got out of the car, and he goes, were you trying to run from me? I said, no. I just wanted to get off the road. You know, like, I realize what kind of condition I'm in. I know what's going to happen. I don't want my car on the road, and I don't want you on the road arresting me. And he actually gave me shit for it.
Gave you shit for doing
what I thought like it was the safest thing to do for him and me. And I went to the PD, the state barracks in Litchfield, and they processed me, and they put me in a cell, which was literally a metal shelf,
yeah,
and a toilet, and a sink, and I went in there and I laid down, and then he yelled at me for laying down. And then I got up and I put some water in my hands to drink some water, and he yelled at me for drinking water. And
trying to make you sweat it out.
I don't know what he was doing, but there was like, I definitely wasn't resisting any of the things. I didn't refuse to take any tests, but he definitely made me feel like I was the worst person in the world. And at that point is when I decided that the life I was living then needed change.
Right.
So I did. I got the fuck out of Brookfield. I moved to Litchfield with his mom, and I had to ride with people from work. So now you have to admit to what the fuck you did. Everybody at work knew because it was in the paper.
Photo or just the name?
No, just the name in the article as to who was arrested over the weekend, and there I was.
Yeah, because it's never going to be a good photo. It's never going to be your,
No, and
it doesn't even appear like.
I don't even know if I remember them taking a photo, honestly. I mean, nobody wanted to see me at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
I had a Nick Nolte image. But like that at that point in my life is when to think about the shit and the amount that I drank then, like I drove from Brookfield to Danbury for New Year's Eve, drank there, and then drove from Danbury to a house party in Brookfield with a fifth of fucking Captain Morgan in my cup holder, drinking it on the way to the next party. Who the fuck does that? And how bad does your drinking have to be at that point where, like, that is okay?
Well, it has to be pretty bad, but probably not as bad as you would think. You have to care less to realistically get yourself to a point where you are putting other people at risk, getting behind the wheel of your car, and risking your life, risking relationships, risking time with your son, risking your job. You have to care at least a little bit less. So
right.
it doesn't, once you get to that point, then anything's possible. I mean, I can say that because I got to the point where it was controlled not caring to some degree. Like I wasn't going to allow other people to see it because these were my problems. I'd like to say that was pride, but I don't really know what it was. But the reality is that when I got to a point that it was bad enough, and I was breaking down, like I said, the initial point of me drinking was to release emotions. And when I started to release them, and I still didn't know what to do, I have all these things coming out, anger, sadness, desperation. You don't know what to do with any of these things, and all these emotions are pouring out of you, and you want to shut it up, but you don't want it to stop, because it's the first time you're actually feeling the things, and you don't know where it's coming from.
Yeah.
That's the problem. And when I talk about the branches and the roots, it's like here's an emotion coming up, here's uncontrollable crying. But what is it coming from? What's the root of tonight's episode? I don't know. But it got to a point with me where, no, I wasn't suicidal at all. But I didn't care if something happened to me. I honestly didn't. There was a part of me that just wanted it to end.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I got to that point. It's not that I want, to full transparency, like when Ian's mom and I had split, there were some periods where I just, like, I don't know, I was just like, fuck it, like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, everything that I had always wanted in my life is now gone.
Yeah.
And it, like, when I say it, like, I am not even remotely exaggerating that there were times where I literally sat on the floor and, like, curled up in a ball. Like, not sure if I was angry, if I was sad, if I was broken, did I want to live, did I not want to live. It was literally hands down one of the whatever. And it could be those feelings, like I said, that led to trying to drink a six-pack in a half hour on my way home, and then going to the bar or staying at home and having more beers or whatever. Like, it was probably those emotions that rolled into it. Therapy is what actually got me through that. years later is when I realized what the fuck I was actually dealing with. And it wasn't the branches up above the soil that I thought it was. It was all the roots of shit from childhood.
Yeah.
Like little things that they're little folders. And they prop themselves up and they put themselves in front of you, but like it's all redacted when you try to find out what it is. You can feel it, but you don't know what it is. But you want it to, like you said, you want it to come out, you want to know what it is, but you don't like the way you're feeling, trying to figure out what it is, so you try to bury it.
Well, you're not thinking, anybody's in that situation is not thinking with a clear head to where you're going to be able to parse through all of the emotions, all of the memories, all of these things that haven't reared their ugly head in so long. You're not just going to all of a sudden, it's not going to pop up for you just because you call upon it.
Right.
And, I actually had this conversation with my therapist this past Thursday because, I was talking about trying to be open and trying to be ready for the positivity in my life. And I told her that it reminded me of a time when my brother died and everybody around us kept telling myself and my mother that, you know what, I saw him obviously after it happened in a parking lot in his car, and I kept turning away, and I would look back, and there he still was. And they would have these visions of him, but they were so clear. And I remember being 16 to 18, screaming, saying, I am fucking ready to see him. Why are you allowing everybody else to see him but me? I couldn't understand it. And me as someone who I do everything with deep emotion. My passions are deep. When I'm really passionate about something, I'm extremely passionate. When I love deeply. When I'm in pain, I feel it deeply. I try to understand it, and I'm not always successful. I'm definitely not always successful because I can't figure out what is causing the emotion. All I can feel is the overwhelming emotion that's coming up, and I can't break through that. I can't break through that to see it.
I think that's what a good therapist does. A good therapist, as you were talking, I just envision a therapist, you're like a chest in front of them and they just open it up, and it's like one of those stupid ass cartoons where they're just in there and there's fucking shirts and basketballs and footballs and whatever, and that's literally what they're doing.
Yeah.
They're starting to sort through everything that's in there, and as they're throwing it out, you're like, oh shit, I forgot I had that, and what, but a good therapist will, when they realize that one of those things that they're pulling out is now a string, it's not just an item, and they help guide you down that line to find whatever's attached to it. And they do it one thing at a time. Now, don't misunderstand as a listener what that means. That doesn't mean that every therapist you go to is going to care enough about you as a patient to do that. There are legitimately probably a handful of therapists that genuinely want to help.
Right.
Some of them want to help, but they might not just have the tools to deal with whatever your issues are. And some of them are just fucking stupid.
That's fair.
And they are incapable of removing their own thoughts and ideas as to what they think is going on with what actually... They can't open their mind enough to what's being discussed to actually sort through it. And then there are obviously the ones that are doing it because the insurance company pays them, and it's just a fucking paycheck to them. So if you don't find the right therapist to help sort through that stuff, take the time and just keep looking. Don't get frustrated, don't give up, whatever. With that said, the therapy piece was, I think, one of the pieces that I think helped sort you through the rehab stuff. And I know, like, when you were there, we were talking about, what you were going to do when you got out, and were you going to, stay a little bit longer and continue the therapy there, because, like, I want listeners to understand that, like, you weren't just there to go through the motions. Like, you worked with other people while you were there. You continued to exercise while you were there to help keep, because Joe, like me, exercise is a core element of what we do on a daily basis.
Yep.
It's the thing that helps keep us sane. It's the thing that helps deal with stress and, whatever for the given day. And it releases endorphins, which, when you do it on a regular basis, you notice the days that you don't do it. But you also took advantage of as many personal sessions as you could get in, as many group things as you could get in, and then in your downtime, you were still helping them do stuff in the kitchen and whatever other task you could do just to stay busy. But whether it was part of what your thought process was or not, like, you really kind of engulfed yourself in the entire process and really wanted to get the most out of it while you were there. And I think by helping out and doing some of those things that weren't necessarily your job, and maybe you shouldn't have been doing them, because I think I remember you saying, like, really not supposed to be doing that, but they allow me to do that. Like, I think those are key steps, because it shows as you go through the process that, like, I'm not just here to go through the emotions. I want to get everything that I can out of this while I'm here and really start to sort through what got me here to begin with.
Yeah, and it's a stepping stone process, because when I got there, I was embarrassed. You see just like the potential picture they probably took at you when you got the DUI. They take a picture of you when you get there, and it was not flattering. And that's the last time, or that's the last. You don't care what you look like at that point, but it's a reminder of how far you've
Did you
come.
keep it? Did you keep the picture?
I think I took a picture of it with my phone when I was able to have my phone. So I took a picture of their picture. So yeah, I got it somewhere. But when you're going through the beginning stages, you're right. I wasn't trying to go through the motions, but I didn't know what I was doing. So I involved myself in everything that they had to offer there. And, there was still downtime. There was still downtime to watch TV and do those things. Put puzzles together, play games, basic stuff, and I didn't want anything to do with that. So I kept myself involved with the kitchen. I kept myself involved with writing poetry, doing the homework that my therapist there had assigned to me, and really going through it. I did a little bit of reading, although I probably could have spent less time in the kitchen and more time reading. But from morning till night, and I would work out twice a day with, I was working out with chairs and a couple of bands. Like there wasn't much you could do, but I needed the routine. I needed to get back into something to where I can see progress. And everything for me, there was a point to everything that I did. When I would eat, I would give myself a lot of time to eat so I can get back to doing the things that I needed to do. I didn't want to waste a moment, but it wasn't like I had these things figured out and I just didn't know what to do, but I knew what sort of not to do. I knew I couldn't waste time. So whether I filled it with something that was 100% practical in my healing, and I don't know, but they did offer a lot of things, a lot of classes or opportunities to speak, and I ran some sessions, and it took actually for them to bring in someone who did sound therapy for me to really go all in, because the gentleman came in, he explained who he was, he went through his spiel of what sound therapy is and the frequencies and how it impacts your mind, and what he said was, you're gonna start feeling some things. And I'm like, okay, we'll see. And so I lay down like everybody else did, the sound sort of put me in a trance, and I'm like, hey, maybe this is maybe there's some truth to it, or maybe it's just a nice sound.
Yeah, they give you some peyote before you went in there.
Right. But I fell asleep, and I woke up at the end, bawling my eyes out. And everybody popped up, because they use it. A lot of people use it as an opportunity to take a little nap. Popping up, looking at me like, what the fuck is wrong with this guy? And even the people that work there, they're like, oh, they grab a box of tissues and they run over and they hand me the box of tissues, and they realize there's no tissues in there, and they're freaking out because they don't know what to do, because they weren't expecting this to happen. Well, yeah, neither was
you bring in somebody that does sound therapy, and then somebody actually has a reaction from the sound therapy, and they're like, oh my god, it works, what do we do now?
Yeah, they didn't know what to do, but they responded beautifully. They're like, we're going to help you through this. And from there it was an opportunity for me to realize there's some things here, and whether it was the frequencies that opened up my mind and allowed me to relax and opened up my subconscious where things were starting to leak out.
Mm-hmm.
There are things there beneath the surface, and if I'm going to get to them, it's only going to happen if I come in with an open mind and an open heart and really take advantage of everything that was there. So, yeah, but therapy, depending on your therapist, like you said.
Therapists, it's super important. Like I can't say that enough. Good therapists listen, they guide, and they don't let you off the hook.
Right.
And that's
100% important.
That's the most important one, because if you lead your therapy session, which you should, but if you think about therapy as like your therapist is your personal trainer, like they're going to say, okay, we're going to talk about this, or we're going to do this exercise, and when it comes to like an exercise, if your personal trainer doesn't stop you and say, no, you're doing that wrong, and put you back upright and make you stay the course, then that's a shit personal trainer. Same thing with your therapist. If you're going to deal with a soul issue on any given day, and they allow you to spiderweb and end off on some fucking tangent talking about this great peanut butter and jelly sandwich you had when you were a kid, and not stay the fucking course with whatever it is you were talking about, that's a shit therapist. Yeah. Like, when I was in therapy, I definitely did that a few times, and my therapist was like, she was a bad bitch. She was the nicest person in the world, but like, she would literally stop me and go, no, we're not going to do that. Get back to what we're talking about today. And if I continue to do it, when the session was over, she'd be like, that was a good session, but we're going to finish talking about this when you come back next week. She never let me off, and she made a fucking note, like that. You ever see that Seinfeld episode where like, oh, with the doctor right in there, like that's like how I left. And I knew I worked hard just for the reasons, like you just said, with the sound therapy. The days that I knew I really struck a nerve were the days that I got in the car, or the days that I literally cried through therapy, or got in the car and just like decompressed. From everything that just was discussed, crying's like fucking fat melting when you're sweating. It really does release some of the scarring, some of the damage. It doesn't fix it all, but through time it does.
So you're breaking things down. You
know that you're getting to the root cause of something. And it should be uncomfortable. You should not walk out of there with your chest puffed out going, I fucking dominated that, because that's not what therapy's about.
No.
You should walk out feeling like a lighter, less sealed off version of yourself. Even if it's a fucking pinhole, it should be a little bit better every single time you go.
Yeah. But you should also walk out of there thinking we uncovered a couple of things.
Yep.
The next few days,
should be thinking about it.
You should be thinking about it. It may be a little bit painful. And I can definitely say that I didn't go through therapy initially in my life ever with that mindset. I did want to lead it. I did want to come across as if, well, yeah, I might have some problems, but I'm like one of the normal ones.
Right.
There is no...
Right, because it's one of those things that you and I have talked about, like you have to be able to stand in front of the mirror and be honest with yourself. And if you can't do that, it's even harder to be honest with somebody else because you're worried about all those things, like what are they going to think about me, and am I going to be judged, am I going to be labeled, am I going to be this, am I going to be that? But none of that fucking matters.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
Right.
Because nobody else has to walk in your shoes every single day. Nobody else has to carry the weight of whatever it is that you're carrying on a regular day. So it doesn't fucking matter. Like, I'm paying you to come here and sort through my shit. If I gotta cry, fart, shit, piss my pants, whatever the fuck it takes, like, it's gonna happen.
Hopefully that helps. Yeah.
I'm not gonna wear no Times Square diaper, but like, we're gonna work through it. Let me ask you this: while you went through your process, did they have you go through like any AA meetings, or did you take advantage of any of those AA meetings on your own?
So yeah, during the process, they had an AA meeting every Tuesday night, and
that was for people from the outside could come in for that.
So they would always they had one regular individual who would always lead it, tell his story, tell more things about him, and he would typically bring somebody in. And it's interesting that you segued into that because that's where I met my therapist. The therapist that I got after rehab was a person who came in as a guest of that gentleman and was telling her story. And I'm listening to her speak, and this woman was one of the smartest sounding, like you can tell, there was no BS about her, but she was incredibly intelligent, and she said she had been a, what's the word?
A therapist?
No.
She was a recovering alcoholic?
No, she was a feminist. She said, I hated men the majority of my life. And because of how seemingly combative she was, I looked at her, I'm like, I need to talk to her because she's going to call me out of my bullshit.
Right. She already hates me because I'm a man.
She already hates me.
So she's gonna want to know all my shit.
She's going to pick and choose, and she's going to look at what I'm saying and understand where I'm coming from. So I actually had an interesting talk with her. I was able to secure her as a therapist, which was tough, but I was able to do it. And I met with her, and she brought up one thing that, like you mentioned, you pull at one of these items and there's a string attached to it. And she had said, I told her one of the comments that my mother made to me and has always made to me, where she said, you were such a good baby, you never cried. But what the fuck do I know? I couldn't hear you anyway, being that she was deaf. And we always laughed about that. And my therapist looked at me and said, you do know what that probably means, right? And I said, no, I don't. Please, enlighten me.
What it means is that my mom is deaf and I was actually crying. She just couldn't fucking hear me.
That's exactly what it is. Where she said, you probably learned how to self-soothe. You probably did cry, and nobody was coming. So I had abandonment issues. I had issues with, especially as I got older, and I realized that I have to deal with these things on my own. Well, okay, here's maybe something that may not be a complete contributor to it, but definitely, in some degree, was probably a contributor because I never believed that I was going to be helped in those situations.
Which is crazy because your mom, although she does have her hearing impairment, she's the direct opposite of that.
Direct opposite.
The nicest care, like she's the female version of you.
Right.
So whatever she didn't hear you screaming about when you were being a bratty little kid,
right.
She somehow instilled in you.
But there's a balance there, right? So like I never, and this is where I say I have, my childhood was to some people would be considered shit, but I loved it. I grew up with nothing. I had a father who was in and out of my life, and he was doing his own shit. Mm-hmm. And grew up with a mother that couldn't hear me but loved me to death and would give me the world, give me everything she had if she could.
Yeah.
But she couldn't. The only thing she could give me was her love.
Yeah.
And so I grew up with at least that.
Right.
I grew up with the whole idea that the love you have for another individual is the most important thing.
Right.
And so when it's balanced with that, with you growing up that way, you don't view it as a negative. So I'm never going to reach back into my memory bank and say, well, it's probably because of this. No, I would never even think to do that. And
Well, I also think in most cases, like a perfectly healthy parent who ignores their child crying for extended periods of time, like, don't get me wrong, as a parent, like, there's a period of time you have to let them cry and try to self-soothe themselves, but there's a point where you got to cut it off because now it's no longer productive, now it's negative. But your mom not being able to actually, which is another topic we could talk about at a different time, because like it's making my mind go on a crazy tangent about like what do we do for people in those situations. Like there's plenty of people with vision issues and hearing issues and whatever, and they're perfectly healthy individuals that can have babies and families and whatever else. Like what do we do to help them? Like now there's probably there's technology to translate in your ear. There's probably technology for that. But the reason why I asked the AA question was when I had to go through my stuff for the DMV, I hated the DMV stuff. Like I had to go to a monthly meeting where you were literally put in a conference room with all these other people that had gotten arrested, and you had to hand in your card saying you went to X amount of AA meetings, which was 15. I had to go to 2 a week. And I also had to do a weekend retreat where I stayed in a room with some dude I didn't know and I was there. I had check-in Friday night and I couldn't leave until Sunday afternoon. So 2 nights in a hotel room with somebody that I didn't know, and it was up in Vernon. But besides that, the AA meetings I really enjoyed. There was one meeting.
Tell me the opposite. You were painting the rosiest picture of the shittiest setup.
No, like
I thought you were
there were some meetings I didn't like because I didn't like the people that went to those meetings.
Yeah.
But there was one meeting that I really, really did like, and I didn't mind going, even though I didn't want to fucking go. And I liked it because they weren't overly pushy about the steps.
Okay.
They were genuinely embracing.
Yeah.
They genuinely wanted people to get better. Yes, following the process, but they just genuinely wanted people to get better. But it was the fucking stories, because the meeting I liked had all the old timers in it. The guys that had been in AA meetings for decades. And listening to their stories and the shit that they did while they were out drinking made me leave there every single night going, I just got arrested for a fucking DUI. And I didn't fucking kill anybody. I didn't crash my car. I got arrested. But, like, these guys fucking drove in the trees, flipped cars, killed their friends, had marriages fall apart, like, all kinds of shit. And I liked the meeting because it made me reflect on where my life was going.
Yeah.
And where I didn't want to be.
Yeah. The meetings will do that. The tricky part about that is to not give yourself, and I'm going to say credit, but I don't mean credit. You're going to compare yourself to the stories of the other people.
Oh, 100%. Leave there. Go, at least I didn't fucking do that.
Yeah.
But I would almost giggle about it because like I was young and stupid and like I really dodged the bullet out of life with this one.
Yeah, but you can also look at it. Not only are you comparing, thinking, well, I didn't do that, and if I didn't do that, maybe I'm not that bad. It's a slippery slope to where if these individuals are quote-unquote the addicts, and I didn't do what they did, maybe I'm not the addict that I think that I am.
Oh, I'm sure there are people that do that, but like I definitely left that one particular meeting because of the people that were there going, probably need to really reevaluate what the fuck is going on. And to be honest with you, like, I was, how the fuck old? I was 23 when I got my first DUI. 3 years later, I got my second. 3 years.
You had a good 3-year run.
I did, and I was fantastic when I left. Hold on, let me think about that. No. False. Those meetings were for my second one.
Okay.
The first one, I was mandated to go to a class once a week, and it was on a Thursday. And one of the kids that I used to party with was also in that class, and we would leave that class and go to the bar.
Yeah, it's Thursday.
So it was absolutely the second one where I had to do the weekend retreat. I had to do all those classes. I had to go to my monthly meeting, and it was then when I decided to change where my life was going at that point. And it was some of those stories. It was realizing that, like, Ian's mom didn't leave my side. She could have been like, because we weren't engaged. We were just dating at the time. Who the fuck wants to deal with this bullshit? And she didn't leave. So it definitely made me feel like, all right, this is somebody. All my friends had left. All the kids that I partied with, all the kids that I drank with, like, they were all MIA after I got in trouble, both times. The only time that they wanted, that they were okay with it all, is when I decided to go back out and kind of start hanging out and drinking again.
Well, nobody wants to be with someone who's now a buzzkill, but no one also wants to be with someone who is now can sometimes be a reminder of what they could turn into. And not that you were different, you just got caught.
Which is crazy, though, because I was the one who drove 90% of the nights.
Right.
Which is right. Like, so, like, we would all pile in my car and we'd drive to downtown Danbury, and then they would all pile back in my car and we would drive back home.
Time before.
So, like, yeah, like my chances of getting bagged are way higher than theirs.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I've said it in other episodes. Like, you really start to learn who the people are that mean the most in your life. Like, when you're in your shittiest situation and you say that you're in a shitty situation, which people at that point say, I'm out? And who are the people that say, all right, how are we going to get through this? Like, they don't look at you any different. They just help you sort through your shit. It is what it is. Like, life isn't perfect. And a friend, not to be named, will learn about that as he starts to understand that challenges in life and things in your life are just that. They're not etched in stone. They are not, like, dug into your soul and never to be removed. They are just speed bumps on the path to the life that you want to have, to the person you want to be. And you and I have kind of, at different points, at different age, things kind of been at the same point.
Yeah.
And I don't know, we talked about it a little bit while you were at rehab, but we didn't really get to, like, you probably learned more about what the fuck I just went through and why I could understand what you were going through at that time now than you did then, because, I don't know, the other guy, does he really understand? Can he really embrace, like, the mindset, the process, what you're fucking dealing with, where you are at mentally? Could he have embraced all of that at that time? As much as I would like to say yes, I will absolutely say no. Now, as he's going through his own stuff, I think he will start to understand it a little bit more and realize that as, I don't want to sound sexist, but, like, as a man, we are supposed to be so many different things, right? We're supposed to be strong. We're supposed to be hardworking. We're supposed to take care of a family. We're not supposed to show any chinks in our armor. We're supposed to be the guiding force in life. We're supposed to be all of these things. And we forget that we also feel, we also carry baggage, but we don't have time to carry baggage or talk about the baggage or feel the baggage because we have to do all these other things. We're supposed to be the guardian, the rock. We're supposed to be the sense of stability. In order to be those things, you have to be able to face those things. You have to be able to feel. You have to be able to cry. You have to be able to admit that you're not perfect.
Oof.
And it's not easy because, like I said, society wants men to be like this fucking indestructible, I'll take on the whole fucking world, which, guess what? The people that don't do those things, that don't walk around with their chest puffed out and try to take on the world, the people that just go through life and carry the baggage and sort through it because they're mature enough and smart enough to know that it has to happen, are the people that actually fit that mold that society says a man is supposed to be. Because they don't brag about who they are. They don't brag about their successes. They don't feel the need to be egotistical. They just go through life, enjoy what they have, try to make their life the best they can, and still be the support system, the rock, but also know that, like, it's okay if I had a bad day and I just need a few minutes to put the fucking tears on and face what the fuck's bothering me and move on. It's okay to feel. It almost makes men feel like they have to be immortal, in a sense. You know what I mean? Like, you're just supposed to take on everything without having any of the things that are stereotypically placed on women, which is, you can't be emotional, you can't have feelings, you can't do any of these things. By not being able to feel those things is what causes those things that we talked about. We're digging through the chest, and now the piece is attached to the string. Well, the string is only there because we didn't deal with it and didn't address it and didn't feel it when it happened. Because we're taught to bury it and pretend it's not there and man up and don't be a fucking pussy and don't do this, and this because we don't have time for it.
I mean, these things that they're in place, but you as an individual grow up learning and seeing from your parents, just anybody who's influenced you. You learn what it means when you get older, but it's almost as if at that point it's too tough to change. Not that it's too tough, but how is this new information that's just been introduced into my life gonna be more important than the things I've always learned? How are you gonna tell me that I need to feel when I've always gotten by without it? Yeah, a lot of people have gotten by without feeling, but a lot of people haven't gotten to the brink of destroying their life to where they realize that not feeling is what's getting them there. It's never gonna hit home if you tell somebody, you should probably let some of your emotions out. Well, why would I do that? Things are going so well. Yeah, but they could get worse in the future. Yeah, but that's not how I think. I always have a positive...
It's not the future.
Yeah,
it's now.
I have a positive frame of mind because of the way I've always handled things, and things have always worked out for me. How are you going to tell me to think differently when I'm not thinking negative at all? Well, there's a point there.
There is a point there, but what that makes me think about is, all right, so as the progression of life goes on for men, you, as a kid, you're supposed to learn how to be respectful and polite, right? And then as you get closer to your teens, now that is the progression where you learn about, where you're taught about masculinity and what it's like to be rough and tough. And you don't back down from this, and you proverbially, like, be a man, like, suck it up, like, somebody pushes you, punch their fucking face, like, that kind of mentality. And then by the time you get into the college years, now you are everything that fucking stinks of masculinity.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, by the time you hit our age, which, you know, you being 40 now and me being 46, you get to a point where you're either through a marriage, you have a family, or, you know, whatever happens, but you're past the point where the world tells you that you need to be this masculine beast.
Yeah.
And now you're to the point where, like, you're lucky if your dick gets up. You're lucky, like, you should probably have your testosterone checked because you probably need TR. You know what I mean? Like, when you hit 40, like, that's what they think. So now they're like, they're naturally becoming a woman because your testosterone's dropping off. So now it's okay to feel those things.
Yeah, it's
but
balancing
like,
out.
The reality of it is like, I don't do that with Ian. All the things that, like, I fucked up, or I thought was fucked up when I was his age, stupid things, like, I don't want him going out to the bar and partying. And I explained to him, he's like, Dad, why are you going to tell me these stories? Because I want you to learn from them. The kid's got more money in the bank right now than I ever had at his age. Not even close.
Mm-hmm.
I want him to be smart financially. I want him to understand that it's okay to feel. I want him to understand that, like, it's okay to feel, but it doesn't mean that you're a doormat. It's okay to tell somebody you don't like it. It's okay to tell somebody, like, please don't do that anymore. It's okay to stand up for yourself. It's okay to still be masculine, but it's okay to also say, listen, I'm having a bad day, Dad. Like, I need to talk. And it's okay if you cry while we have that talk. It's perfectly fucking normal. And I want him to learn those emotions because I didn't get that from my dad. You know, like, I didn't have that connection with my dad. Which is probably why, like, having to sort through all that shit when his mom and I split, like, on my own, because who the fuck was I going to go to? You know, who's going to understand where my mind's at? My dad was divorced, yes, but, like, he kind of said, like, fuck you, you cheated on me, and whatever else, and, like, just kind of took that mentality, but, like, I literally felt like my world collapsed. I want Ian to be everything that you and I are just learning how to be now. I want him to know that it's okay to be that at 19 years old, at 20 years old, at 21 years old, because it'll make him a better man, a better dad, and a better partner in wherever his fucking life takes him. You know, like, I want him to be, I don't know, I don't want him to be perfect, because nobody's fucking perfect, but I want him to approach things with an open mindset. That, like, if you have a problem, we talk about it. Whatever it is.
Around it.
If you, right. If you failed, who cares? Everybody fails. You have to fail to learn. You have to make mistakes to learn. I want him to be better than I am. And that's a role as a dad, but, like, we all dads say it, but how many of them actually fucking preach it? There's somebody else that I follow on Instagram. I won't say who it is, because they're very popular on Instagram. And they preach about all of those things that we had to deal with growing up. You know, like, you have to be a man, you have to hit the gym, and you have to do all these things in order to be the Hercules, the gladiator of the world. And those things are fine and good. But like I said, it's not the people that bark that you need to worry about. It's the people that don't. That are the people that are the ones that you really need to worry about. The people that will really defend their family and their friends fiercely, but at the same time, when things go bad, be the same person that will sit in the corner and cry with them.
I agree with that 100%.
And like I said, as popular as he is, and I've had conversations with the guy, like, he's not a bad guy. I just don't agree with his philosophy. I don't know, somebody does, obviously, because he's popular. He's got his own platform and his own app and a bunch of other things, and I respect him for it because he also is a recovering individual and fought through a lot of years of being taught the wrong ways of how to live your life, and I commend him greatly for being able to make the changes. I don't think it needs to go as far as he pushes it.
Well, I think that people that preach those things, they're preaching to a set of individuals who are looking for someone in all the right ways to justify their actions, but sometimes even in the wrong ways. Like, and I'll give you an example. I responded to someone on Instagram today, and the topic was centered around men don't need therapy. They just need a spouse that will listen and respect what they're doing for the family. That's the shortened version of what they said. And my response to that was, Well, what about both? Because all you're doing is giving those who already don't want to seek therapy justification for not seeking help for themselves. And that's a problem, because masculinity as it's defined by a lot of people are just actions attached to, well, this is how we've always done things. This is how we've always done things. You need to be a provider. You need to act this way. You need to bottle up your feelings. You need to do all these things to fit the criteria of being masculine or a man.
Or, I mean, you can't leave out, like men don't do laundry, men
Right,
don't do dishes, men don't clean the house, but,
This
like,
is just not what
I got fucking news for you. Like, this guy does that. Like, I do laundry, I clean the house, I fucking cook dinner and do dishes and whatever. Not because it makes me less of a man, but because, like, this is my house too.
Right. But it's also, there's nothing scientific. I mean, there is. If you go deeper into it, it's all scientific. Like, how does a person with high testosterone act? Well, why do they act that way? Well, high testosterone does things to individuals, and lower testosterone does the opposite things. Like, there's medical reasons for these, biological reasons for the way certain people do act, but then you throw on top of it, well, this is just how men have to act and women have to act, and it's not the case. It's like, here's what you were given individually due to you being a man. This is what your body makeup is. Therefore, you are likely to act in this type of way.
Mm-hmm.
Here's how you can balance it to function in society, and that's something that I never necessarily knew how to do, because I am the quiet one. I've been quiet my entire life. I've been quiet to the point where people thought I was just an asshole, like I was too good for them. Like, no, I don't know what to say to you. I have nothing to say to you.
Or, I've seen what you're doing and I don't want to talk to you.
yeah, but I've always been very introspective. I'm thinking about my actions. I'm thinking about the way that I think. I'm thinking about other people and the way that they're doing things. And, I've had some great people in my life. I've had friends through the process that have just supported me to no end. I was seeing somebody at that point who had supported me throughout the entire thing. And it wasn't perfect support, but it was support, and I needed that. I saw somebody, we'll call her my friend, afterwards, who gave me the opposite of everything I've ever gotten from somebody. And we talk about communication, we talk about therapy, we talk about pulling on the strings. This person did that for me without requesting anything in return. Wasn't getting paid from insurance companies, was just genuinely interested and knew how to pull that string for me. Opened me up to a point where, sad to say, couldn't shut me the fuck up. And it was something that I've never experienced before. But it's something that we all sort of need. We need to be heard. Because the more I get it out, the more my thoughts become more honed in. You open me up, like, for instance, she opened that box, that Pandora's box of shit. And it's like, okay, here's everything all at once. And you're mixing this problem, that problem, the way I'm thinking about it. It's blending into one sentence, and I'm rattling them off, one after the other. And what problem are we dealing with? I don't fucking know. We're just dealing with all of them at once. Hopefully you can parse through the information and figure it out, because I can't. But the more you get it out, the more you can make sense of it. And I've cried and I've let these things out, and I've done the opposite of what being a man is, quote unquote, what being a man is, because it doesn't matter. This is who I am. I'm a protector by nature. Whether that's because of how I was raised, whether that's because I grew up primarily raised by my mother, so I protect the women in my life.
I don't think being a protector is taught. I don't think it is either. But I think it's just
it's reinforced. Could be reinforced.
I think it's naturally in you. I don't know if it's genetic. I think it's naturally in you because, like, you being in the, having some kind of a military background, like, we all have, like, when I was a kid, we were down in Ocean City and I saw these people get hit by a car, right? And there was probably a dozen of us down there. 5 of the 12 of us ran without even thinking right to it.
Yeah.
And the rest of us stood there like...
Deer in headlight?
Yeah, like, not that we didn't want to help, but, like, it was like your brain just kind of shut off for a minute and you were like, what the fuck just happened?
Yeah.
But, like, and that's what I mean by, like, some people are just natural protectors. Like, they just go.
Well, part of it, I believe, there's some kind of, I don't want to call it trauma response, but some people have the ability to, when they see something happen, they can turn off the part of their brain that's trying to process it, and they just act.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's partially what it is, because it's part of who you are. It may be genetic, maybe not genetic. It may be partially due to how you're raised, but even if you're raised a certain way, if you can just respond, that's not something you're raised to do, because you're not growing up like, all right, son, we're gonna do this thing. We're gonna have your big wheel smash into a tree, and your big Cindy doll's gonna go flying out, and you're just gonna respond. And we're gonna time you. Like, there's none of
that's
that.
Weird.
There's none of that.
What's funny is that, ironically, one of those 5 kids is a firefighter now. He was a tremendous fucking hockey player, and he tremendous hockey player. Played nationally, played at fucking Dennis Leary's house in Washington with a bunch of pros. Like, tremendous hockey player. He's a fucking fireman.
Yeah, just looking for.
He's where is he? He's in Bridgeport or Fairfield. One of them.
Okay, so it's part of him. It's part of him.
It's just who he is.
Yeah. It's like, did I become a firefighter because this is how I am, or or the things that I kind of grew up with lead me down a certain path. You don't know. You don't really know. It's kind of all encompassing, because, like I mentioned my father he was a drug addict. He's not anymore, and he's, he wasn't in my life a lot or as much as he could have been, but he's the most caring individual I've ever met. So I have this balance about me where, I might have this this part of me that grew up where I was self-soothing, but I also have parents, my mother, who loved me and would do anything for me. So I might have dealt with things on my own, but when I was with her, I didn't associate her with someone who was mistreating me.
Right.
So I learned that if there's a problem in my life, and no one's telling me that it's a problem, I need to handle this on my own. If nobody's coming to help, and maybe this is where the overlap is. If nobody's saying this is a problem and I'm going to help, and how often does that happen in life? It doesn't really. Like, when you're younger, maybe.
I think in your particular instance, I don't think, like, we saw how bad it was, because I remember coming home that night and I was telling Audrey, I was like, I don't know, Joe was really fucked up. But if we were roommates, I don't think you would have been able to hide it as well.
Hell no.
I can't confirm or deny, if I was a single guy and we were roommates, that I would not have been proactive about being a part of it. Just based on, like, my path and where I've been.
Yeah. But if you were a single guy and we were roommates and you were a part of it, there's a good chance that
There's a good chance that neither one of us would have ended up in a good place.
No. And never gotten anything done for ourselves.
The problem is that, like, when people get to the position where you were, you do a great job at hiding it.
Oh, so good.
Where you still respond to texts and all those things, but, like, respond to reels or whatever, and I don't know, we never really had that relationship where we were on the phone talking all the time, and, like, we could not talk for a month, and then, pick up the phone and everything, just like we had talked every single fucking day.
But it's not like I'm trying to hide it. Like, subconsciously, yes. But when you say like, if I respond to something for a second, I snap out of it. And depending on the level of involvement that's required of me, will determine how much I have to snap out of it. So, like, when I went to work, up until the end, because when at the end, there was no...
Yeah, at the end you said there was no boundaries. It was just like, you just did what you had to do in order to not feel sick.
Right. When I had to go to work, like, I can snap out of it when I'm at work, which becomes the problem because I am very well prepared to block out the things that I need to in order to not feel. So when you send me a text and I respond to that reel and I'm laughing and I'm like, the laughs are genuine. Like, it's not like I don't want them to know that I'm fucked up and blah blah blah.
Oh, by the way, I've been drinking for 2 days straight.
Yeah, right. It's like, no, that shit is funny.
No. I sent you a funny reel. What the fuck are you talking about right now?
Yeah. Like, no, it's funny. Like, that thing is funny. And then when I'm done responding, immediately when I put the phone down, I'm back in my shit. And I'm not going to let you in on it. I'm not going to let anybody else in on it. The moment that I let somebody in on it, which is surprising when I decided to call you and LeVar and say, I need you guys to come over. I knew it was time. I didn't want to make the decision that I had to make. So I was taking all the steps prior to. That
was early though. You went in what, April or May? Because I remember it was warm out.
I went in July, end of July.
And we were up there in the snow. I remember it was snowing and shitty the night that we went up to go see you. Yeah. And I remember Audrey was like, are you sure? Like, maybe you can just go tomorrow. And I was like, listen, Joe never says I need you guys here. Hell or fucking high water. I'm going.
Right. And he may never say it again.
Yeah, it was snowy and shitty. We took the 2-wheel drive Audi because God forbid should LeVar fucking drive anyway. Eddie wasn't on time when I told him I was going to be there, which also doesn't surprise anybody.
Oh man, yeah. I mean...
Oh, and then he also told the girl at the liquor store when we stopped, not realizing what we were walking into, and we stopped and got a six-pack. He told the girl at the liquor store that we were a couple.
Oh, of course, yeah. I mean, why not make it weird?
Yeah, well...
I mean, listen, you didn't know what you were walking into, but I didn't know what I was going to get into. There was no game plan. There was just... I don't know what to do. I am reaching out because this is I need to make it known. I think I had to force myself I had to force situations on me. Mm-hmm. Like, it's not a matter of, can we have this sit-down talk? And where I can think about the sit-down talk and how it's going to potentially benefit me. It's, I don't want to do this, they're going to know. The only thing that's required of me is to send out a text and make a phone call.
Mm-hmm.
Can I send out a text? Yeah. Okay.
I just remember leaving and we were like, Joe, you need therapy. Like, you need to talk to somebody. Yeah,
Yeah, you're not telling me anything
I left scared and confused and concerned that night because, I think there was an empty 16-ounce Trulies or something on the counter, or a White Claw or something, and you were drinking one or the other when I got there, and then you were talking to us, and then you got up and
those are my pacing drinks.
You got up and you made a fucking pint glass that was 3/4 of the way filled with vodka and something else, and you drank it down like it was a shot, and then you got up and you made another one. And I went, and you crushed half of that. Literally, I'd be lying if I said it was fucking 10 minutes. And then you were...
Christ, I hope it has to work the next day.
Passing out on the lounge, whatever.
Yeah, my body was shutting down.
Coherent enough to say goodbye, but, we left there going, I hope fucking Joe doesn't, I don't know, we were concerned you were going to throw up and fucking,
man.
not have your head turned and Jimi Hendrix it, or or whatever, and we were like, what the fuck is going on? Like, all the stuff we talked about that night, none of it added up to why you were
in the shape,
in the condition you were in.
Yeah. That's called not planning.
And like, yeah, well, I mean, we knew you were reaching out for something, but like what we talked about, like, ended up not even being the fucking reason that we were actually there.
Yeah.
It was everything else but.
Yeah. Well, basically, what I needed was surgery, and I'm asking you to just dress my wound for me. Like the surface level, just kind of.
Yeah.
It wasn't.
I guess. Yeah.
It wasn't because there's no plan there. Like what. I didn't go over it, especially if I'm reaching out to you when I'm already drunk. I'm not going to sit there like, well, here...
And make some bullet points so that I don't get lost.
Yeah.
As this night progresses, I need some bullet points. But then you see him and you're like Billy Madison, like you're seeing the fucking penguin or the bunny or whatever, and you're like...
Right. So what's the hope? I mean, people get to that point. I got to that point, you know... It's not just sharing a sad story. There are many reasons to start drinking. There are many reasons to start anything that you're addicted to. There are many reasons that you continuously do it. And if it always, well, I don't want to say always because you can never say always, but when you get to a certain point, it has the ability to lead down a path to where you're hitting bottom, and then you're hitting another bottom, and then you're thinking, well, my life is over. It can't get any worse than this. Well, sure as fuck can.
Yeah.
So
it can if you allow it.
It can if you allow it. But you're asking people to make the best decision for themselves about something that's gravely important. And I say gravely because you can die from it. Right?
Yeah.
So
well, there's alcoholics that go into the hospital for other medical reasons, and they actually put them on an IV drip of alcohol. Because their body will shut down if it's not there.
Yes.
Because they've been in that state for so long that their body has now been physically and chemically dependent on it.
Yep. And I was physically, chemically dependent on it, mentally dependent upon it. My dopamine levels were shit. And then that's, to get into the scientific aspect of it, my dopamine levels were no longer responding to things that were positive in my life that are just everyday things. And it's the reason why you need a drink in the morning. Your dopamine levels starting off your day are lower than baseline, which means you need a certain amount just to bring you back up to baseline. Like when people think when they wake up and they are sober and they're starting their day and they're groggy to get out of bed, but they have the minimum amount of motivation, your dopamine levels are fine. You go below that because you've been abusing something, whether it's alcohol, drugs, your phone, sex, something, and you don't have that thing, and you've gone without it the entire time you've been sleeping, your dopamine levels are shit, and you need something to get you up to a baseline. So you have to do a complete reset. And that's where my treatment sort of took me, where I went through the process of treatment. I knew I was going to encounter physical changes. I knew I was going to slim down as I got back into the gym and I just stopped drinking and all the great things that come along with that. My skin was going to clear up, my eyes were going to clear up. I was going to feel more like me. I knew there were going to be mental changes. I was going to think more clearly. I wasn't going to have the brain fog. I was probably going to get some sleep, at least a little bit more so. But I needed to see the mental changes because anybody that suffers from anxiety, depression, overthinking, which a lot of people that have an addiction do, and it's certainly things that I've dealt with. You add addiction on top of that, you are not touching those problems until you get rid of your addiction. And I don't mean get rid of it. I mean you need to put the...
Yeah, because you don't get rid of it, you just manage it.
Right. You got to put the cork on it, pun intended. Like you have to put the genie back in the bottle.
Right.
And then throw that bottle at the bottom of the ocean. Like, yeah, that's what you have to do in order to start addressing these things. So I needed to see the physical changes, but I also knew those physical changes were going to end. I'm going to plateau, just like anybody at the gym plateaus. So what else can I see? I need to see the mental changes.
Yep.
So I started working with people for my mind and my mentality. And then I needed to see the changes that were reflected in how I live my life. And that's where I started putting all the work in towards finding a purpose, going back to school, switching careers, moving, changing my scenario or my surroundings, changing all these things, talking and prioritizing people in my life that had more of a positive influence. And then once I did that, which is ever evolving, then it's how do you address the minute things that are going to be your tripping hazards. My overthinking can lead me right back into the same negativity, which sparks the anxiety, which triggers the drinking. How do you manage those things? That takes a lot of work and that takes time, and it's all habitual. But
right, which is why recovery is always a work in progress. It's never done. It's never I'm a recovered addict. Right. It's always I'm a recovering addict. It's never I am sober. It's I've had so many days sober, so many years sober, because it doesn't stop. The day that you stop focusing on your well-being and understanding the things that are hazards that get you to those points are the things that lead you back down those paths.
100%. I mean, when you stopped, like, you can see, or you didn't stop, but like, when you got out of the turmoil that your wife had sort of turned into, like, what took its place for you?
Nothing really took its place. What I did was take a step back and say, regardless of where this life goes, my son needs me. And he needs to always, like, I used a term that was like, he doesn't need a dad, he needs his dad.
Yeah.
You know, and like, his stepdad's a great guy and has done a phenomenal job, and at times where I was failing as a dad, like, his stepdad did a great job with helping fill that void without even knowing that he was filling the void. But that's what has done it for me, is, and even now, like, we talked about this, like, I used to drink at least a 6-pack of beers on the weekend. Now I'm lucky if I drink, like, I had one beer today. If I have one beer or one, like, finger of bourbon on any given day or any given weekend, like, that's the extent of what it is now. And it's not that I don't enjoy it, it's just, like, having an extended amount of drinks anymore, just, like, my life is so good now that I don't need something else to kind of compensate it and make me feel good. You know, like, I have a great house. I have a great lady. I have the new little one who, because I get to be home a little bit more often, I have a phenomenal relationship with him. So I have all the other moving pieces around me that I have friends around me that actually are friends. What else do you need? You know, like, I don't need people that are going to be fake. I don't need people's bullshit. I get to just enjoy life and just be happy now. I don't need anything else to really, I don't know.
Mask anything.
Not even just hide it, but to try to make it better.
Yeah.
I don't. Could I stop drinking? Yeah, I absolutely could. But I enjoy brewing beer way too much. And, like, the problem is that I spent all this money and I got this great big elaborate homebrew system, and now I'm drinking less beer.
Well, you know,
right? It's kind of hypocritical, but, like,
it's hypocritical, but you better make it count when it's time for you to test that beer. And
yeah, I'm still only going to have maybe one or two. I'm just going to have to, I don't know.
Well, listen, sometimes the best coaches are the worst players. Like, it doesn't mean you have to always dip your toe in the water.
Right.
You know, to
I don't know.
to support the
Call me
race.
old now, but I'd rather just enjoy like one or two than try to enjoy 15.
Well, you're not enjoying it at that point. Like, it becomes, well,
I can't wake up in the morning and go get my workout done
Right.
at 5 o'clock in the morning. I won't sleep great. Like, there's a whole bunch of other moving parts that disrupt the things that, like, I don't want to lay on the couch hungover when I could be enjoying time with the little guy who, like you see, he's a handful. He moves a million miles an hour. He wants you to do something every second. Like, what kind of a dad am I going to be if I'm like, listen, Daddy doesn't feel good. We're not doing that. That's not the dad I want to be. That's not the person I want to be. So it's just a change. It is what it is. It's life.
It's life.
Am I going to say that like if I go on vacation and it's all inclusive that I'm not going to enjoy beverages all fucking day long? I'm probably going to do that. But like, am I going to do it to the point where I'm shit faced? Absolutely not.
Right. And that's the thing that's the hardest part about, for me, not drinking. Because and I brought it up, I haven't been a problem, or my drinking has been a problem socially. So I am going to miss it when I golf. I am going to miss it for game nights. And I made the joke, like, I'm going to have to develop a personality because I was the quiet one who used it to go out and be social. Now I don't care. Now I don't care as much. But like if I'm golfing, do I want to at least be in a position where I can have one, even symbolically?
No, I wouldn't.
But it's not something that's an option. Like, I ruined that for me.
It's not just that. I just think with where you are, with like you have a great career going, with opportunities knocking on your door all the time. You've made a lot of headway.
A little more often. I'm not going to dispute if they decide they want to knock a little bit more.
I mean, all jobs can come more often. Yeah. Like I'll let them fight for me as an employee. that's absolutely fine.
Fight for me.
But like you don't need it. Like, what is it going to bring to your life that you're not currently enjoying?
Nothing.
Are you going to enjoy game night any less because you're not having anything to drink?
I'm probably going to find out. That's
you're the same fucking person.
Yeah,
you're the same person. Like at least around me, like and around like those around me, like you're the same person. You know, like personality wise, like jokes, the whole nine yards. You're the same person now than you were when you were drinking. So, do you need any of those things? No. Does anybody need them? I don't think so.
No,
but we do it because we enjoy it.
It's a comfortable level.
It's like a fucking snack or I don't know, a soda or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, it's just alcohol has a different effect on the body.
It does something for the moment. So like, and I'll be honest about like when I first came back from the rehab and the first time I came over to see you guys, and it was, what was it?
It was
Labor Day. Well, one of the holidays.
It was one of the days I remember because you showed up with like a meal already made. I was like, dude, you showed up with food? Oh, we got food, and you were like, no. I'm on a diet right now.
Yeah, I needed to stay on track. That's another problem. But you know, I did sit there and wonder about my personality in those moments. Because I thought, is this going to be tough for me? Are they going to be feeling weird around me? I was judging myself on how I responded to things. So it took a little bit of time for me to just say, it's okay. Nobody's looking at you like you're the only guy not drinking.
No, we just wanted you to be there.
Right. Or they have a separate cooler. There's a separate cooler for people like you. Like that feels...
Well, I don't want you to say that because I do, like... Today we specifically made sure there was seltzers in there because last time you were over, you were like, "Do you have any seltzers?" And I felt bad that I didn't. Like, but don't take that like.
No, but it's just the initial.
Like, Audrey's dad drinks a certain kind of beer, so I try to make sure I have some of it in the house because when he's here, I want to be able to offer him something he likes.
Yeah.
And we'll drink seltzers anyway. You know what I mean? Like his beer, I'll drink it if it's there, because there's nothing else.
Right,
but like it's nowhere near anything close to the top of my list.
No, I mean, like, I joke about it, but, like, it was just the initial concern of how I was going to be. And everything suddenly had a meaning. You know, if somebody looks at you a little bit differently, Are they judging you?
Fuck them.
You know, like, but it's the people I care about. So, and I don't mean judging as though they look at me like, oh, this person is weak or anything like that. No, like, it was more so I didn't want to come into a situation and have people feel like they needed to be mindful. Like, I just had a tragedy in the family. Like, hey, bud, you doing okay? Like,
No.
I know you can't have a beer, but we have this really great. Self.
To be honest with you, that's why I didn't change anything that we did the first time we came over. We just went about our day like we normally would,
normal.
And we wanted you to be there because we just wanted you to, like, I don't know that nobody was going to offer you anything to drink because we're supportive of where you're at in your life. But we wanted you to be there to be able to enjoy it because, you know, like, you're a part of the family, and why would we not want you to be there?
Yeah.
To be fair, sometimes there are family members that I would prefer to, you know, sometimes be there, sometimes not be there, or whatever. But, like, there's a saying that, like, once you have a family of your own, the family that you're born into isn't necessarily the priority anymore.
Yep.
Those that you choose to be a part of your family, and they're there not because they're born in or blood, but they're there because they want to be there. That's more of what family is, at least to me at this point. Like, I love my family. I do get irritated with them, but, like, I'd much rather spend time around the people that I consider my family. You know, like, obviously Audrey and the boys are my family, but, like, you and Aunt, like, those are people that are family without the blood side of it, you know, and I don't know, some other people can kind of,
it's a different feeling.
Like, they're friends, but they're not on the same level, you know. There's more, there's a handful of other people that encompass into that, but, like, I'd rather have the family that I choose.
And that's what makes them family. That's what makes them elevates them in importance, because they choose to see where you're at and still.
So we're supportive, right?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, and family doesn't necessarily do that. I mean, some of them don't. Some of them don't. It's, well, we're only here because
we have to.
We have to be here, and it is what it is. That's just people in general. But I mean, I bring up the initial or the previous point because there are people that worry about the stigma. There are people that worry about, well, if I go through treatment or I get help, how am I going to have to change my life? And the reality for me was, I thought about those things, and I played them in my mind or at least how I thought they would play out, and I go through it now, and I don't care if things have to be a little bit different you don't have to accommodate for me, but I'm not going to feel awkward if there's something a little bit different. Mm-hmm. Or if you have to say, hey, just letting you know, like, Joe doesn't drink, don't offer him anything. And even whether I know about that or not, it doesn't make me feel awkward. And I think the turning point for me was the first time I went out after basketball with Chris, who was here tonight, and we went to a restaurant with a bar. We sat at the bar to eat, and he had a drink. I had a Diet Coke. There were a couple of older gentlemen at the end of the bar having some shots, and the old guy had been there probably a while, and he wasn't drinking anymore, or he couldn't finish the next shot. And the waitress or bartender looks at me and she says, do you want his shot? And I said, no. And she looks at me and says, why? Are you an alcoholic? And I just looked at her, I'm like, yeah, as a matter of fact, I am. And the look, how mortified she was, I'm like, it's fine. Like, I'm not...
Yeah, you're the one who made it weird.
Yeah, I'm not...
You brought it up, so actually, I am.
Yeah, I don't feel broken anymore. It feels more like a diet for me. You know, I love certain foods, but they don't fit with where my life is at right now. And I'm making the decision not to introduce it into my life. So it's never...
You're a better man than I, because I still eat whatever the hell I fucking...
Listen, I mean, I still break down occasionally, but I try to view it the same way, because it's not like I can't have a drink. Yeah, I can certainly have a drink, and it's probably going to fuck up my life. But I'm not telling myself you can't. Like, yes, I physically can do anything that I want.
Yeah, it's not worth what it'll do inside.
Right.
Will it spark that reaction where now your body's telling you that you need more?
Yeah. I don't know the outcome. I don't know if I don't drink for 10 years and I can slowly introduce it because I've worked on the mental health portion of it. Like, I don't know what that outcome is. But what I do know is there's a high probability that it's going to screw up my life.
Yep.
And when you make any decision in life, you don't know the outcome. So you go with the facts, you go with the probabilities, you go with all the statistics that you know. And why would you
mess with it? Why would you go
against the numbers?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense, right?
Right? So if it's not that important to you, like, it's not important enough to me to find out whether or not I can handle that drink. Like, I don't for a second believe, because I've never been this type of person, that I'm gonna have a drink and all of a sudden it's like, he's back, baby. Like, I've never been the type to, like, oh, now we're just pounding shots at the bar. Like, it'll be a slow decline for me. Yeah. It'll be a slow death.
Yeah, I had one drink yesterday. I don't know. It was a couple, I'll wait, and, like 3 days later, you're like, I could do 2.
I handled it.
2 weeks later, you're like, well, those 2 didn't really bother me. I could go 3.
Yeah.
And you're right, it does. It starts to chip away at you a little bit, and before you know it, you're knee deep in the muck again, and
you don't know how you got there.
Hoping that somebody realizes it and throws you a rope to help you get back out.
Right. And guess what? I've gone through all of the... I've jumped through all the hoops on how to hide it from people in the past. I will be so much better.
Better at it, right?
So...
Because now I know.
I know. And don't get me wrong. There's a part of me that believes wholeheartedly that you handle the mental issues, the things that are stopping you. Because I look at that like statistics. If I drink 100% of the time that I have anxiety, and I have anxiety 80% of the time in my life, well, what if I cut that anxiety down? Because theoretically, you cut out the anxiety, you cut out the reasons to drink, if not socially. So if I cut down the anxiety, or I cut down the intensity of the anxiety, or the duration that the anxiety takes place, theoretically you cut off all sources of the need to drink for a negative reason.
Right.
And that's how I view it. But I also know that drinking for me, it's like anything else. You listen to a sad song and it reminds you of something in your past, you're going to get sad. You do anything that reminds you. I can't think of having certain drinks without it triggering a memory of something.
Of a time.
Yeah, of when I felt like absolute shit. And I don't want to go back to that. I would rather live my life with the purpose that I'm setting up for myself. Find someone in my life that I can build a family, whether that's a family of 2 or beyond, and just live happy, live peacefully. That's all I give a shit about. That's the only thing that's really important to me at this point in my life.
I think that's a good way to end.
Yeah.
I think that's a fantastic way to end. All right, so thank you so much for talking. This was a long one, almost 2 hours. So
shit.
So again, thank you so much. Next time you're up, let's jump on. Let's do something else.
Yeah, we'll do this.
And thank you guys for listening. And we'll talk to you guys real soon.